Welcome, everybody, to today's session. I am your host, Emma Farrell, and I am delighted to be introducing and interviewing the Summit's very own Selima Harleston Lust, who is a wife, mother, and co-founder of Iwilla Remedy. She's passionate about helping people travel the most graceful path from ill to well. And Selima bridges the gaps between your body, your consciousness, and your soul's evolution. So today she's going to be talking about following the breadcrumbs, how plants can guide us from trauma to joy. Welcome, Selima.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here and to be talking with you, Emma.
It's great.
So my childhood wasn't ideal. You know, on the surface, my sister, mother, father, and I, we seemed like a normal, healthy family, right? We had nice things. My attorney parents drove luxury cars. We lived in a 6-bedroom house. We went to the best schools and we traveled. My sister and I took dance and music lessons. I ran track and she was the captain. No, she ran track and was the captain of the cheerleading squad. I sang in the church choir and even joined the youth ministry. But behind this facade, however, was a lot of violence. In short, my father was an alcoholic who terrorized us, including the dog. Abuse of every kind took place in the home. And so living with fear was my normal. Crying myself to sleep was my normal. Having nightmares and peeing in the bed until I was 12 was my normal. Feeling ashamed, unloved, angry was my normal until I was well into my 20s. You essentially, you carry your childhood wounds with you everywhere you go until you learn to heal from them. I moved out at 18, went to Spelman College for undergrad, lived in the South Pacific for 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer, lived in New York for grad school, and, fell in love with, married my wife, but my childhood trauma really tagged along for every move, every graduation, every endeavor, every relationship. And I was also like a very cold person, mean, detached, completely cut off from my emotions, and I drank a lot, more than I think is acceptable for your 20s. It was not until our honeymoon in Spain, I was suffering through the worst sinus infection I had ever had, with no hope, no medicine, not enough Spanish to ask for help, that I began to tally my growing list of physical ailments. Digestive upset since childhood that was misdiagnosed as lactose intolerance, embarrassing adult acne on my chest, my back, my arms. I was having hot flashes, hip pain, back pain, neck pain, knee pain. I'm sure it was all well on its way to being diagnosed as fibromyalgia, and very heavy, painful periods since my very first cycle. At 25, I was practically scheduling my future hysterectomy and hip replacement as if they were inevitabilities. I drank Campari and soda through the sinus infection because I didn't know what else to do as we traveled across the countryside of Spain. But returning home, that was really the turning point. Within 1 year, my wife, Tammy, and I, we had completely overhauled our diets by eliminating the junk food, the processed food, the fast food. We committed to movement, a yoga practice, but the most profound shift was taking herbal medicine. And what began as really my wife's exploration into essential oils and herbs, with me kind of looking at her with a side eye, a lot of skepticism, it did grow quickly into our own home apothecary. We were having success. Well, she was having success, and then I tagged along. And we had made positive changes. The plant medicine was profound. And so one day I went through the medicine cabinet and I just threw everything out that wasn't plant-based. All of the over-the-counter drugs, all the pharmaceutical drugs that we had. Because by this time we had figured out how to create our own blends for acne, for PMS, for headaches, for anxiety and stress, for my digestive issues. And we even went further to develop our natural body care line, natural deodorant, lip balm, creams, and serums. And we started selling those to our community, and the entrepreneurial nature in me. It was during this time that our company, Iwilla Remedy, was actually born. But even with all of the changes we made to our lifestyle and establishing more holistic practices, we realized that we plateaued. I'm an overachiever. And so I did not want to just feel okay. Though feeling okay gave me hope, feeling okay also meant that I still had flare-ups. To some degree, I had simply transferred, my dependence on pharmaceuticals to herbal medicine, which can be an improvement, but I was clearly not addressing the root cause of the ailments I was experiencing. So fast forward, and Tammy and I started studying herbalism formally, learning it as a discipline and essentially a spiritual practice. And in the middle of our training, all of my childhood trauma rose to the surface. Repressed memories of being sexually abused, the emotional abuse I had suffered as a child, the tragedy of living in this household environment where I was terrorized, all of the horror of being raised by a violent and alcoholic parent. This all came flooding back. And this was the lowest of the low. It literally wreaked havoc on my body, where every physical issue I had thought I made improvement on had a resurgence. All of it: back pain, acne, stomach, hip issues, wrist pain, in addition to sleep paralysis now. So now I am repeatedly being attacked at night. I cannot wake myself up, cannot save myself. And anytime I would think about the trauma, I would just have this emptying out feeling from the breast down. All sensation would leave me. I felt like jello, almost like I was going to collapse and cave in. And that's when it really hit me that every health issue I was having in my body was related to trauma. It was the most profound realization of my life up to this point, because now I understood why I was in pain. That was 12 years ago. I'm in a place now where I don't experience those physical pains. I'm not triggered by thinking or talking about childhood trauma. My relationships are much better. I'm certainly not drinking my sorrows, and my personality, yay, is much improved. I'm a radically different person than I was back then, and definitely feel more vibrant in my body at 40 years old than I did at 25. I'm the person I feel like I knew I could be, and I know the joy I had when I was born, like before darkness consumed the light. So my intention with our time with this talk is to really walk you down the path that working with herbal medicine illuminates. Each step of the way, as you are healing with plant medicine, they invite you through a new door. They reveal another possibility, and they support you in deepening your awareness and elevating your consciousness so that you actually heal and return to yourself as home and reclaim the joy you had when you were born. In our time, I want you to envision that we are walking down a path. And the first experience you have on this path is that of pain. And the first breadcrumb that you have to pick up is the choice to pursue relief. And it is a choice we have to deliberately make. There are many people who tolerate suffering. But how do you pursue relief with herbal medicine? Well, the most familiar way that people understand how plants work is through pain and symptom relief. Most people turn to plant medicine because they are looking for relief from some type of physical discomfort. When you search on the internet, you're searching for herbal remedies for depression or headaches or stomach aches or colds or viruses, etc. This is many people's introduction into the world of herbalism. It was certainly mine. And there is always some type of herbal support for ailments or physical disharmony in the body. It doesn't always mean that herbs alone are going to get you all the way there out of pain, but there is always some kind of support we can receive from plants that will, to some degree, usher in relief on a physical level. So here are 3 ways that you can use herbal medicine for your physical healing. 1 is prevention, 2 is to address acute concerns, and 3 for long-term restoration from chronic pain and imbalances. Each approach requires a different method and strategy in terms of how you'll use it and take the medicine. But in general, for prevention, when there isn't a particular ailment that you're trying to heal from, you incorporate nutritive food-like plants into your everyday diet. Plants like moringa, stinging nettle leaf, hibiscus, oats, red clover, chickweed, dandelion, there are so many. The practice that I use for my family is to make weekly family infusions. I'm not trying to address any particular health concern. My focus is to nourish, support, maintain, or generally improve our baseline of health. And the second way is to address acute concerns for common conditions like influenzas. Now, COVID is a part of our regular life. Ear infections, stomach bugs, headaches, first aid. For this, you would think about the issues that arise within your family or household, say in a given year, although the last 2 years have been a bit unpredictable, to put it mildly. And you would set up your home apothecary in such a way that you have the herbs and the medicine made ahead of time so that it's ready when you need it. If you have school-aged children, having an antiviral blend of elder, echinacea, maybe bone set, lemon balm, having those in the pantry is wise. If you are very physically active, work with your hands, do a lot of manual labor, then having herbs for first aid like plantain, lavender, and comfrey already made into an infused oil or salve, that would be wise. Our son experiences seasonal allergies, so I know that from February through May, he needs our allergy relief tincture, and the remainder of the year, we all drink our immunity syrup. And it's always wise for us to have nervous system support on deck for stressful times like skullcap, kava, passion flower, chamomile. Like, the society we live in, you're going to need it. So generally speaking, and there are no hard and fast rules with herbal medicine, but generally for acute experiences, you take and apply it when you need it, perhaps for a couple of days or weeks. Then once you're feeling better, you stop. So the third way is to address chronic concerns. I think some of the confusion, though, is that people don't know when something is acute or chronic, and they don't know that they need to adjust their approach. If you experience pain every day for a prolonged period of time, like weeks, months, years, then yes, you likely know it's chronic. But what about the person who has migraines, not daily, but sprinkled throughout the year at intervals that you can't predict? It's not associated with hormonal fluctuations or a dietary trigger. Like, this person may think they need to take herbal medicine at the onset of a migraine, but I would counter that because even though it's unpredictable, it's still a chronic experience that needs to be treated as one. So for chronic conditions, you need a more complete protocol that includes herbal medicine and likely dietary, lifestyle changes that you're going to have to follow and make these necessary adjustments for months. The most important element, however, when we're having a chronic experience is to remember that the buildup to physical pain did not happen overnight. It happened over time, specifically the buildup of mental and emotional tension over time that gained momentum. What everyone needs to understand is that the body is a masterful messenger, communicating to us on the physical level through sensation, perhaps through pain, what's happening within in our mental and emotional spaces. When there is physical pain and there is an expression, that is an expression of the inner discord that's happening inside of us. In our societies, this inner tension, this emotional discomfort is often ignored, goes unnoticed, is tolerated, or accepted as normal. But as the inner tension builds, the energy of it has to manifest physically and likely through pain. So pain, while undesirable and unpleasant, it gets our attention. Regardless of if it's acute or chronic, there's meaning behind it. And it's the body's way of saying, tend to your inner world, tend to your mind, listen to your spirit. With acute conditions, they are both somewhat easy to dismiss as not having meaning, but if you're someone who is trying to live intentionally, acute issues are also somewhat easier to understand the emotional root cause. How many times have you gotten sick to the point where you had to stay in bed because you needed rest? Acute issues invite us to question whether or not we need to get sick in order to rest, in order to take a day off, in order to set a boundary, or even get attention, receive love and care and tenderness and support. An acute condition, if we allow, can help us be more honest with ourselves about what we need and to honor it. If we accept the gift that an acute condition reveals, then the next time we're approaching similar mental or emotional tension or overwhelmment, we can stop it in its tracks. Take the rest, take the day off, have the difficult conversation, tell our partner we need more attention, or tell our kids we need a little less. We don't have to get sick in order to get what we need. Chronic conditions, though, because the momentum has built up over time, it can be harder to pinpoint the emotional root cause, but it surely has one. And one way to understand what pain is telling you and why it's present is to pay attention to when it intensifies. Again, I knew my childhood trauma was the root cause of my pain because anytime I thought about it, my physical body responded loud and clear. And another way to make that connection between what the body is saying, what's happening internally, is honestly to be honest about the traumas with the big T and the traumas with the little t that you haven't reached peace on. We are healed when we can think about a situation and not desire for it to have been any different than what it was. We have forgiven when we have let go of the need for the wrongdoing to be acknowledged, accounted, or apologized for. You can't thrive in your present or imagine a better tomorrow if you are tethered to the pains of your past. And if you're in chronic pain like I was, then there is something that remains unresolved within. They're all related. So you're going to create herbal medicine and start making changes to your life that support healing chronic pain and this issue, or you're going to go see an herbalist for a consultation and receive a protocol. And in the taking of it consistently, you will begin to feel better. You will begin to experience relief. So now you're walking this path from pain to relief. And no matter how you're using herbal medicine, whether it's for acute or chronic issues or preventative, but like let's be honest, most people begin to think more preventatively once they've experienced some discomfort. All of your pain may not be gone, and that's okay, but realize that relief represents hope and possibility. Relief is the first sign of progress, and that relief could be physical, as in your pain has lessened to some degree, there's less flare-ups, less infections, but if that doesn't happen right away, do not discount the emotional and mental relief. Feeling more at ease inside is relief. Being able to reach for more positive thoughts because they help you feel better is relief. Having the strength to say no and set a new boundary is relief. Too often when we are in physical pain, we only look for those changes to happen in our bodies, but positive changes are happening in other areas of our lives. So now we're at this place where we're experiencing some relief. We're seeing the opening of a new door, of a new possibility. In deciding to pursue relief, we ate that first breadcrumb. And now we know relief is possible, but we don't trust it. Here we go. Emma, I'm sure you've seen this in your practice. I've seen this in my practice, and we see it all the time within our families where someone makes a positive change in their lives, starts to feel better as a result, and because they feel better, they stop. They stop doing the things that were helping them to feel better. Like when you hear it aloud, it sounds nuts. Like, why would we do that? Why would we stop? Why do you stop doing the very things that supported you and you felt the direct benefit of? I personally believe that, people put limitations on their well-being because they have a worthiness ceiling. They think they can only feel just so good, that somehow tolerating any degree of pain is normal, is expected. And when they feel a little better, they aren't going to try their luck. They're not going to try to reach for more. So we don't trust that wellness can be sustained. And when we don't trust and we put a cap on how well we can feel, we begin this loop of like feeling better, stopping the supportive practices, then feeling worse, then re-implementing the practices, like to feel better again. And this cycle just like repeats. But we can't simply break the cycle by telling people, just trust, just trust the medicine, just trust your process, just trust your body. We have to build safety first. And this is the second breadcrumb, the next door that working with herbs continuously opens to us and invites us into safety. Plants can refamiliarize us. We can refamiliarize ourselves with our bodies and reclaim safety within our bodies. Return to the safety that we should have inside of ourselves with plant medicine. This is our first home. It is not supposed to feel like a threatening place. Safety has to be restored if we're going to reach and reclaim the well-being that is our birthright. And so let me paint another picture of what it was like for me growing up. I had to take the temperature of the household. I knew by the time of day, by the cadence of my father's gait, I knew by his tone, whether or not he was already drunk, going out to drink, already in a rage, and like depending on the temperature of the house, depending on the time of day, I knew when to go grab food and go back to my room, like when to make an appearance, when to make myself invisible. I knew when I could push back. I knew when I couldn't. Like this was me living in this like super hyper vigilant state, constantly flowing between fight, flight, freeze, or just completely disengaged, and trying to feel as safe as I could in an unsafe environment. So whether it's traumas with the big T, traumas with the little t, I think everyone can relate to feeling unsafe in different degrees. And when we're experiencing this for prolonged periods of time, our nervous systems are dysregulated. They're jacked up. And certainly this manifests as different forms of pain, but it also changes our personalities, where we begin to engage in the world with chronic anxiety, depression, detachment, disassociation, hyperindependence, and inability to be vulnerable and emotionally connected. So much so that we begin to believe that this is just who we are, and it's not. The miraculous yet subtle shifts that continuing to work with herbs grants us is the graceful chipping away at our armor. If people can get past the idea that they are just helping relieve our pain, and you continue to work with plants and receive their gifts, you find yourself more and more in a parasympathetic, engaged, and open state. Working with adaptogenic herbs and nervines, flower essences, and bitters, they all have a direct benefit on our nervous systems. It's so subtle, but it's so profound. And in addition to encouraging a parasympathetic state, they have this magical way of just tapping into the shifts that you need as an individual. It's going to be different from what I need. They are conscious beings that work on our consciousness. This invitation into safety happens because of their reliability, because of their abundant presence, because of their steadfast and unconditionally loving support. Because of their resilience, we are able to tap into our own. So in the beginning of our marriage, my wife Tammy and I, we would get into arguments. She would get so upset with me because I was hyper independent. Like I would not allow, or appreciate it when she did things for me. And this is like partnership, right? Like it's what it's supposed to be. I hated surprises because my past taught me that surprises were unwelcome. They never brought anything good. And these are all trauma responses. One day, I don't remember what we were arguing about, but she said, I didn't trust her. And it made me pause because that is not something I ever said, but my behavior said it loud and clear. And it wasn't that I didn't trust her. It was just that I didn't trust anyone but myself. She had already proven to be immensely trustworthy. But the only way I was able to recognize her trustworthiness was because I was also experiencing it with plants. The work you do with herbal medicine is always mirrored in your life. And since I knew I was safe with nature, then I knew I could be safe with her. And this was such a profound moment in our relationship. Like I can really tap into that moment and into how much lighter I felt. I can envision that it feels like a chest plate of armor melting away in that moment. And it was because I made the choice to keep going. It's much easier for me to say what those breadcrumbs were, to kind of name each layer of healing that I was being invited into now that I'm on this side of the experience. But back then, it was the simple choice to just keep going because I wanted more from my life. So now the armor's off. You feel safe inside of yourself. You've taken it off. You're experiencing more ease, deeper inhales, greater perspective, because you realize that there's more enjoyment in life when you don't perceive or engage with the world as if everything is a threat. The third breadcrumb leading you home is that of connection. When you start working with plants regularly, you can't help but start to view nature in a different way. You pay more attention to the seasons. You want to spend more time outside. It's as if the trees, the wind, the fungi, they're calling your name. You look at what's growing all around you with like wonderment and possibility, with curiosity and these fresh eyes. The physical relief we receive from our symptoms opens us up to wanting to know more about nature and this planet that is also our home. And we discover that we have a place here among the plants, that we are supported and cared for and thought about. Like, think about that. Like when you come from a traumatic environment or history, then you have been disregarded or discarded by people. Our relationship with nature can help repair those wounds because it tells us that we are thought about. No matter your religious beliefs, there is an undeniable force among us, within us and surrounding us, that knew that we in our physical bodies would experience injury and created medicine for it before we even knew to ask. There is a reason why there are so many plants that support our nervous systems, because it's that safety, that relaxed state that keeps us open and receptive. Wood betony, damiana, rosemary, ashwagandha. Like think about our heart and grief medicine that help us access the good and forgive when we would rather harbor our resentment. Motherwort, hawthorn, linden, rose, mimosa. If you really sit back and think about that, it can be like the insight that helps you remember that you are loved beyond measure and that you belong. In our human interactions, the battles between egos, yes, we have the potential to create a lot of harm and suffering, and we become jaded. We stop believing in goodness. Trauma conditions us to expect people to cause and perpetuate hurt, so we distance ourselves. But nature inspires us, after each hurt to open up again. It reminds us that openness and appreciation and generosity of heart, that's our natural state, and the state that allows the most well-being. The day we begin to see our connection with nature, that creates a desire within us to have those same generative, reciprocal, and harmonious connections with people in our lives. If I can have a loving relationship with burdock root or chamomile, my first plant teacher, then why can't I have that within my community? As we continue receiving from the plants, we can better identify what genuine loving connection looks and feels like, because we're witnessing that generosity and that blossoming, the surrender and non-judgment from the plant realm. They are the most profound teachers of acceptance and grace. No matter what stage you are in, there's always a place for you to feel supported and loved and like you belong. And like I said before, your work with plant medicine mirrors your life. So that connection you feel with the plants begins to shift your relationship dynamics where you can ask for, align with, and receive more supportive community and also engage with others differently. So now we've experienced relief, we've experienced safety, we've experienced connection, and the final breadcrumb is remembrance, where we are no longer tormented by trauma and its cousins, chronic pain, PTSD. There's an entire world that reopens to us. Rather, this world becomes visible again. The gifts of relief from longstanding emotional disturbances and physical pain literally lighten our world. We see more clearly when peace has replaced anger, when ease has replaced constriction. I often say that pain, illness, and disease, no matter the underlying emotional root causes, are the biggest robbers of our time, our energy, our money. And I used to believe that the biggest theft was that of our motivation. But now I think that the biggest theft is that of our vision. People underestimate the power and pull of emotional and physical pain and how much it blocks who we are and what we came here for. There are many people here on this planet who function suboptimally, but think about how much more clarity or purpose accompanied by the energy to pursue and excel at it that there will be when you're out of pain, when you've healed your trauma. Some people cannot even imagine what it would be like to have a future without pain because they've been in it so long, it seems impossible. But what do we do when it actually happens for us? We dream again. We believe in new possibilities, new pathways open up. It was not my dream, nor my intent to be an herbalist or a healer. One of the saving graces of my childhood, though, was that I was heavily involved in the performing arts. I attended dance classes several times a week. I took music lessons on various instruments from elementary school all the way to being a voice major in college and teaching music in the Peace Corps. I thought I was going to work in the arts and entertainment industry, and that's what I built my plan around. We know how we're attached to our plans. And at the same time, that trauma was resurfacing, all of the doors to this career path were just like slamming in my face. And the only option was for me to pursue my own healing. I had no other direction or guidance other than to walk this path for which I had absolutely no blueprint. And it was honestly not until I was 4 or 5 years in after the birth of our son that I felt like I knew this was my calling. I knew this was my work. I knew this is what I came here to do. We had our business, I've been doing consultations, but I was still struggling with my own trauma, getting pregnant with and having, giving birth to Niles. That was when I really felt the turning point in healing trauma, because everything I had done up until that point led me to being able to reclaim my body, be fully and safely in it, and change how I lived my life and changed my relationships. And that was when I started seeing a new vision for my life, to see the mission I accepted when I incarnated and to follow through on it. I wouldn't have gotten here, though, without all of the invitations and picking up each mysterious breadcrumb from the plants at each stage of this journey, of just saying yes to what came next. And each yes led me closer and closer to myself and to my joy. So each step of the way, you have a choice to follow the path, to take the next right step, to open the door that leads you back to yourself, leads you back to your light and your vibrancy. Herbal medicine helps us remember and release, and through that reclamation and clearing, we are invited to choose. We are not forced, we are not coerced, whether we are given another option. So the question at every crossroads is, are you going to keep doing what you've been doing that's not working? Are you going to keep responding and reacting to life the way you always have been that's also not working? Or are you going to be intentional? Are you going to fill these cleared spaces with new energy that's aligned with where you want to go, who you want to be, the healed version of you that already exists? Or are you going to reclaim your joy?
That's so beautiful. Thank you. That's a huge amount of information. And what I'd like to ask you, actually, Selima, is, as you so eloquently explained, trauma can be very complicated. We're complex creatures. And so how would somebody go about choosing where to start with all of their symptoms and choosing where to, because it's difficult to know what's been affected by what's been created by what. And so it can be quite a jumbled mess for people to try and kind of get to the bottom of. So where do they start in choosing which plants to start working with?
I love that question so much. And I get it often. And I think that one of the places where people can begin, if it's not repressed like mine, like mine was, and you know that you've had a traumatic experience and that you need to heal from it, I actually think that the very first step is deciding to heal it. So many people don't even make that decision, and there can't be an assumption and a leap into this is going to be healed without our proactive decision that this is something that you are willing to put the work into to overcome. And then from there, if you know that its manifestations are physical, if you know that there's physical pain in your body that you're experiencing, I often tell my students to think about a particular symptom, like what is wreaking the most havoc on your life? Because so many people try to heal all things. And we know as practitioners that many of our ailments, they are interconnected. But if I tried to tackle painful periods and acne and my digestive upset all at the same time, I would have been overwhelmed, especially like not being an herbalist at that time. So now I'm researching plants. I'm trying to figure out what's at the root of my digestive issues. I'm trying to figure out the musculoskeletal system. There's too much. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to focus on my gut health, and that is going to be my focus for the next 6 months, and you decide that that's where your research is going to be, or that's what you're going to see an herbalist for, that's how you're going to tailor your whatever dietary changes that you need to make, focus on that one thing and acknowledge the improvement that you're making, right? The improvement that is happening along the way. Because I think people will also see that in improvement with their digestive issues, which is huge, right? That you're going to see improvement in some of those other areas. But that would be my first thing, is to make the decision that this is something you're going to heal from, because that is your intent. And that's what's going to keep you focused throughout this entire journey. And then as it relates to coming up with your own herbal protocol or researching plants or seeing an herbalist, pick one symptom. You can talk about all of them, but pick one that you would like to see improvement on and go from there.
Great advice. Thank you. That's great. And what do you think is the biggest obstacle that people face when they're trying to heal?
I actually think that the biggest obstacle is belief. We can't change anything if we don't change our convictions. And so much when it comes to like physical disease or physical ailments, people, if you're reading on the internet, which like who isn't, you might see a hopeless picture. You might read a hopeless picture when you're going through Google diagnosis. And that cannot be what determines your future. Can you shift your belief into the possibility? Sometimes we can't leap from belief to done. You know what I mean? Like I believe, and therefore I know this is going to happen. But maybe there's an incremental step where you can go from I'm a little bit hopeless, but I can believe that there's a possibility. We have to start incrementally. But like we start to see results in our lives based on how we change our beliefs. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but it's like you have to think it, you have to see it before you can actually see it.
For sure, I totally agree. And then there's this kind of stage that we get to when we're working on ourselves and working through things where we just need to let go. You know, we've held on to things for so long, and without dishonoring ourselves, without dishonoring the experience that we've been through, we get to a point where we just need to let go. But a lot of people really struggle with that, just kind of getting over the finish line. How do you support your clients with that?
I think that's such a great question. And it's probably one of the most challenging ones, right? And when I step back to have we made the decision to let go, some people don't realize that they haven't actually made the decision to do that, and think about, and the fears that we have around letting go, and perhaps thinking about what do you perceive to be the consequences of that, especially if it's a trauma that's been done to you. Do you think that letting go lets that person off the hook? Like letting go and forgiveness are so tied, right? And so one is to make the decision that you are going to let go. And I think a part of the process of letting go is acceptance that wherever you are, this is where you are meant to be, and nothing could have been different up until this point. And then I think it's also a mental practice. I was telling Tammy and I were talking, I think this was several weeks ago. Like sometimes we get ourselves caught up in the same like mental loop. Like this is like worry, right? Or like negative prayers or doubts, where we keep picking up the same issue. We go around and around in circles. There's still no resolution. Or perhaps we make a decision, but we still don't have conviction around that decision. And so we put it back down, then we pick it back up. I think there is a practice of like, once you've decided to let this go, that every time your mind wants to draw you back into the issue, you have to say, thank you. And I'm going to put you back down again. It's not necessary. There's this mental game that we have to play. Like every time we pick up the worry, we say, no, this is my decision. Thank you for reminding me that I need to anchor into my intent and my decision, and I'm going to put that worry back down. And we literally have to stop thinking about it. we have to attempt to stop thinking about it until that becomes natural.
Yeah, and it reminded me of, in Sanskrit, there's a decision called a sankalpa, which is a decision that you make with 100% with every cell of your body, and it's definitive. And I've actually healed myself. I have chronic rhinitis, and I got to the point when I'd tried everything and I'd been through different things. And I was like, right, this is the last plant medicine that I'm going to attempt with this, because we have to accept that not everything works every time. Yeah. So I sat with this plant medicine. I was like, this is it. And I made the decision with this like 100%, and that was it. It healed it.
That's it.
And so that power of belief is so important. And I love also the way you talked about how the plants are so benevolent, and they kind of help support us to kind of trust in the flow and trust in the benevolence of that nurture, and just accepting that nurturing, it's kind of fills in a gap of that nurturing that we lost perhaps when we were a child or didn't receive as much. So yeah, I love the way you work with plants. It's so holistic and really supportive. So yeah, thank you for sharing everything that you have today. So do you have any last kind of message about your style of working, or kind of advice for people when they're kind of starting on their path to heal their trauma?
Yeah, I think I want people to know that you have a choice. You have a choice in how you choose to care for yourself. Like obviously everyone who's watching this, they have some interest in plant medicine, may or may not know where to begin, may or may not have experience, but know that you have a choice, and that every choice can lead you toward your goal, whatever your wellness goal is, or your healing goal is. Know that it's your birthright to feel well and to feel whole and to feel loved and supported. I want people to know they have a choice. I want people to know that they also have a choice in how they perceive and think about a situation. Just as you made that determination. Our mind is our greatest medicine, right? It's like we can completely take out all of the modalities. If we have the conviction within, it's done. It's already a done deal, right? And so for people to know that you actually have a choice in how you think about something, that can open up so many different doorways. That can open up possibility for your healing, for you to reclaim your well-being and your joy. But you have to be deliberate about what you think about. I also want people to remember that just like in a tennis match, we are not going to declare a loss or a victory until it's over. How many times have we seen the GOAT, the champion, Serena Williams, come back from losing consecutive point after point after point and win? And in the same way with our healing journeys, we are going to have ebb and flows. We are going to experience flare-ups. We are going to have bouts of sadness, of depression. Like it's not linear. And when there are moments when we are feeling discouraged, not to take score, not to determine that what you've been doing hasn't been working, just because you're not all the way there yet. Like it's progress, and we have to acknowledge our progress every step of the way and be grateful for that, show appreciation, and keep going. But just like with the mind, and how when we make that determination within ourselves, we have to be able to know that within our conviction and within our belief and within the vision is the promise. So it doesn't matter what happens along the way. We know what the end is because we've already decided it. Just like it doesn't matter how many points Serena loses. At the end, she's already won, right? So that's a part of it too. It's like if you make a determination that you are healing from this thing, hold on to your conviction and your belief, ebb and flow through the practices that you need to utilize to support you in that healing, but don't get discouraged and don't determine yourself a failure if it's the natural ebb and flow of the process.
That's so wise. So wise. Thank you. So if people wanted to get hold of you, Selima, where can they find you?
You can find us, Tammy and I, on iwillaremedy.com is our website. And also Iwilla Remedy on all social media channels. Probably the one that we are most active on is Instagram.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much for today and for sharing your wisdom and for sharing your holistic view around the plants and your work. It's truly appreciated. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you so much for the shift.